Good morning, Ari. It is January 30th, which means we know the Super Bowl matchup now. How you doing? Look, I personally didn't really have a great weekend in terms of my betting, but you know, I was happy to see a certain team get not not really leave the playoffs, kind of get kicked out of the playoffs in dominant fashion after they beat us in dominant fashion. But this is another episode of AKP Sports Talk, guys. Good morning, welcome, Ari. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing, pretty good. Obviously, we had the one game so we can come down to a close finish and one game, not so much. But all in all, it should be a fun Super Bowl either way. A couple weeks away, so hopefully, everyone can get healthy because there's obviously a lot of players banged up. I mean, that's the case every year pretty much at this point in the season. So.
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of injuries for just all throughout yesterday. I mean, we'll start with the first game of the day. It was Niners Eagles, and you know, speaking of injuries, we saw two at the quarterback position. The position where the Niners, have really struggled to find consistency. And first it was Trey Lance, and then he goes down week 2, and then Garoppolo goes down, and then Brock Purdy is the guy now. And coming into this game, the whole kind of feel was, let's see how Brock Purdy does against a real pass rush defense on the road in a true road environment. And he was doing pretty decent for his first drive. And then, as soon as he got hit by Hassan Reddick on that blitz, that turned into a fumble because he never had control of the ball. Turns out he has some kind of UCL injury in his arm. And then we're thinking, oh no, here we go again. Niners lose another quarterback. Here comes Josh Johnson off the bench, a true journeyman in the league. And then he goes down. He gets a concussion later in, I think it was like the fourth quarter when the Niners rode it down. Third quarter when the Niners rode it down by, I think 28-7 at that point. It was just nothing was going the Niners' way. Offensively, they couldn't get anything going just because of their quarterback situation. Defensively, they were doing the best they could, but, the run game was just too much and too powerful to really, handle, especially when Bosa was getting injured for a little bit. It was crazy. Just all the injuries that piled up in this game. But, the Eagles definitely got the dominant win, 31-7. They're going back to the Super Bowl for the first time since 2018 when they beat the Patriots. And, this Eagles team, I really, really love how they're just playing right now, even though, yes, you can kind of say they've had a cupcake schedule in terms of who they've played because they've played a Giants team that they've already beat twice in the season, then they beat down again 38-7 at home. And then they played a Niners team where they didn't have, they had to have Christian McCaffrey as the emergency quarterback for a couple drives because they didn't have a quarterback. And so that really brings up the question, like, has this Eagles team really been tested? And that's pretty much the question we've been asking all season because, we saw the easy schedule that they've had, right? But when you look at who they've played, especially in the NFC East division, where there's a lot of good teams now because, there's the Cowboys who made the playoffs, the Giants who made the playoffs, Washington who was close to making the playoffs. Like, it really precedents itself. And then looking next year, I saw that the Eagles have the hardest schedule next year. So it's definitely not going to be easy for this Eagles team. So I feel like, definitely getting it done this year is kind of their goal. Ari, look, we saw both sides yesterday. We saw the absolute destruction at the line, pretty much the battle of the trenches, right? Between the Philadelphia offensive line, which has been really steady all year, and then the San Francisco pass rush, which has been the best in football. They couldn't get anything going. And so that was just, kind of furthering this, really big gap as to why, the Eagles just pretty much won. They were tearing apart this defense. I mean, the Niners offense would be on the field for maybe like a drive or two or maybe a minute. And then here comes the defense back on the field and, they just ran the ball down their throats. And so that's pretty much the key reason as to why this Eagles team won the game in such dominant fashion. But what do you think of this Eagles team? Are you really buying what they're selling right now in terms of, how they've just established the run game back-to-back weeks, having their defense only allow 14 combined points in 2 games. And then for the Niners, obviously, the whole question is, what if this team wasn't injured, right? And we kind of say this every year for this Niners team. Sorry, I'm smiling. I shouldn't be smiling. Never mind. But we always say this for this Niners team, right? It's always, they're right there and they have all the talent. And maybe it's a missing receiver. Debo gets his money. Maybe it's a missing running back. Oh, they just signed for Christian McCaffrey and traded for him. Oh, well, now it's the missing quarterback. I mean, how many excuses are we going to make? And how close is that Niners window to closing? Because, in a game like this, where you just lose in absolute dominant fashion on the road, nothing goes your way. We saw Trent Williams try to be Mr. Try to be Gunter and Cody Rhodes in the Royal Rumble, having a fucking spar. Excuse my language. I mean, I don't know what was going on there. That was pretty classist in my opinion. But what did the 49ers do, right? Because they are in this position right now where they are literally a quarterback away. And there's been rumors that Jimmy Garoppolo is leaving. We saw him smiling on the sideline. It looks like he's already has checked out at San Francisco after he lost his starting job to Trey Lance, who is, now there's the question is, do you really go back to Trey Lance next year, or do you ride this momentum with Brock Purdy, but now he's injured, so what do you have to do with that? And you have to evaluate his timeline. There's so many questions for this Niners team. Where do they start? And then for the Eagles right now, they get 2 weeks rest. They go to the Super Bowl. They're going to Arizona. They got a good matchup coming up. And, are you buying this run-heavy team? Because obviously what's been the big success throughout the regular season for this Eagles team is the fact that they love to throw the ball and they love to throw the ball deep. And Jalen Hurts has not been doing that as of recently because, the run game has just been so dominant. So for the Eagles, do you expect them to kind of keep using that run game with Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell, and even Jalen Hurts? Ironically, you got to put him in there, the four-headed group that kind of leads the backs. And then for the Niners, I mean, what do you do now? What is the quarterback outlook for next year?
Yeah, I mean, just going back to this game, yesterday, it's easy to forget just given how the rest of the game went and how it ended. But I think the game really changed in the first possession when you had the 4th down pass to Devontae Smith that gives them, first and goal at the 5. They score 2 plays later. And it turns out the pass is incomplete. And they asked Kyle Shanahan after the game why he didn't challenge it. And he said, the angles that they had on the sidelines and what they saw on the scoreboard, showed that he caught it. But it's like when you're in that moment and you're seeing Devontae Smith run up to the line and telling the team to hurry up, shouldn't that, hint at something that he thinks he didn't catch it? And it's like at that point, at that point, you have to throw the flag at that point. And it's like, I think it's like at that point, if they do challenge it, it's overturned. They get the ball, they get the ball back. Eagles don't score. A lot changes. Maybe Purdy doesn't get hurt, blah, 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 all of that. So I think that this loss really is on Kyle Shanahan in a lot of ways. And it's like at some point, with all these quarterbacks getting hurt, every year, it's like there has to be someone, to blame for it on the play where he did get hurt. Purdy did get hurt. I think it was Tyler Kroft. I think it was blocking Reddick, and it's like, why are you having a tight end blocking, their best pass rusher? And so there's just a lot of questions with this Niners team. Obviously, talent has never been an issue. It's always just been how they've finished games and how they've shown that stepped up and shown in the big games, the championship, NFC Championship, and the Super Bowl. And they've made it to this point 3 or 4 years, some 3 or 5, something like that. And Super Bowl, they had the 10-point lead over the Chiefs that they blew. So just that they've been right there. And yeah, I mean, I've seen people talk about Purdy, his toughness, questioning it, blah blah blah. But it's like he might need Tommy John surgery. I think, like you mentioned, and that's like a year-long injury. And so I think the fact that he went in the game in the second half and didn't even throw, except for that one little 3-yard pass to McCaffrey, shows how bad the injury was. You have McCaffrey threw that one pass that went to John Lynch on the sideline. Yeah, and then obviously Josh Johnson. Even with all the injuries, it was 7-7 like halfway through the second quarter. You had the Josh Johnson fumble right before halftime. If you don't have that, and it's just 14-7 at half, it's a completely different game, you could say, than 21-7 at half, obviously. So yeah, but at that point, you can't take away from the Eagles either, because they earned the number 1 seed in the regular season, obviously, and they played who they played. You can't fault them for who they played, I think. So obviously, Hurts, and I think in the passing game, he's going to have to do a lot more against Mahomes in the Super Bowl. But, I don't think you can call the Eagles a bad team because they just had the fortunate draw that they had. Like, they can't control who they play, obviously. And obviously the Chiefs had the tougher draw with the Jaguars. They were, I would say the Jaguars and the Giants were about on par. And then obviously had the Bengals versus Josh Johnson and no quarterback in the Niners, obviously. So that was the big difference. But, the Eagles were the number 1 seed pretty much all regular season in the NFC. And so it's not like that much changed. So, yeah, I think, we obviously were hoping to see a better game between the Eagles and Niners. But, obviously you can have all these what ifs and what if this would happen, blah, blah, blah. But, what happened, and the Eagles were the best team in the NFC, or at least they were the best. They had the best record pretty much the whole regular season.
Yeah, and you mentioned the whole thing with Kyle Shanahan, and that has, been a really big focal point, right, of pretty much just his tenure in San Fran. There has been many, many opportunities for this man, whether it was when they made it to the Super Bowl in 2019, whether they made it to the NFC Championship last year, NFC Championship this year. There have been so many opportunities for Kyle Shanahan to either turn the game into his favor or potentially even win the game, right? And I feel as if we always go back, for example, his coaching, we always go back to his coaching ability. We go back to the Super Bowl. They're up 20-10 against the Chiefs. They blow that lead. Who is the one person we always blame? Kyle Shanahan. The Niners were up 17-7 last year in the NFC Championship against the Rams. They lose 20-17. Who do we blame? We blame Kyle Shanahan. A little bit goes to Jimmy Garoppolo, but Kyle Shanahan. This year, the first play, you mentioned it, Devontae Smith catch, no catch. Kyle Shanahan should have challenged. I agree with you. I feel like he should have challenged that play because I don't know what he was thinking. You can see that the Eagles are running. It's a deep pass. He makes the one-handed catch in the air, but obviously does not control it to the ground. I feel like, if you want to establish the tone and it's so early in the game, your court, your team upstairs is telling you, look, you got to challenge this, right? You should be challenging this because obviously, as you mentioned, if you get it, right, that completion never happens. And then who knows? I think that was on a fourth.
Yeah, but in the press conference, he was saying that his team didn't have the angles to be able to tell that it was incomplete, but it's still in that moment, you have to see that Smith, for a reason, is telling the team to rush, snap it quickly. And so I think in that moment, you shouldn't have to wait for your team to, or for whoever it is, the people upstairs, to tell you to challenge it. Smith telling the team to hurry up and snap it should be enough to throw the challenge flag as the head coach.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. I feel like, there is a lack of communication there between whether it was Kyle Shanahan and the coaches upstairs or whatever, but you can tell that this Eagles team was rushing to the line for a reason. And it was because, they were uncertain on whether or not that Devontae Smith made the catch. But there's always these coaching decisions, right? for Kyle Shanahan that we always go back to and say, if he could have or should have or would have done this, then who knows? Maybe he would have a ring by now. But he doesn't. And that's something that most people, I even know if Niner fans who don't even question him. And I feel like there's, Kyle Shanahan's been there for a while, right? And he's been known as this coach who, can't really hold on to a lead, or when he's doing good, can't get the job done. And so I feel like this is, and that's how I feel like the window's closing. I feel like this Super Bowl window for the 49ers is closing because, there's part of them that is like, okay, yes, how much can you retool and rebuild until you keep doing the same thing and it does not work? Like, how much are you going to be doing that? And I feel like this Niners team is in that position or going to be in that position. I feel like after this coming year, where they're going to go in two different directions. They're going to be either going in a direction where they're like, okay, maybe we can actually, win a Super Bowl, and we have to retool a couple positions, or they say, you know what, I don't think this is. I don't think the window is opening wider. I think it's getting closer, and it is closing at a really, really good rate right now. And so, and this may be personal animosity, but I really do think that the Niners are not going to be as good as they were next year from what they just produced this year. I don't know. I really don't know, bro. I feel like if Kyle Shanahan is still the head coach, if the Niners team is still figuring out their quarterback, I don't know how you tell me that this team is going to win 13 games again, especially with the teams that they've played and how they lost in dominant fashion. And you see Jimmy G on the sideline smiling already. And, I've been hearing that Trey Lance may even get moved because they're just so set in stone on Brock Purdy. And, why did you waste that pick then? Like, why did you draft Trey Lance so high to have him play 2 games? He gets injured. You have the last pick of the draft come in. He's what fits your system. And then you go with him. And that's why I was saying, like, I think a Jimmy Garoppolo, a Brock Purdy type of quarterback fits Kyle Shanahan's system the most because they're pocket passers who don't need to run that much, right? And Trey Lance, he's a kind of do-it-all quarterback. He can run, he can throw deep, he can, scramble. He's like a Jalen Hurts. And I don't feel like this system fits Trey Lance. It doesn't. And we saw it yes, the first game, the weather was bad. The second game, he got injured. So we've seen so little of what he can really do, but we've seen so much of what Brock Purdy can do. There's no comparison, right? And so the Niners are just going to be in this weird position all offseason to go in 2 different directions. And then for the Eagles, obviously, you mentioned, yeah, I definitely agree. They've been the number 1 seed for a reason. They were dominant all game. They established the run game. They won the battle down in the trenches. And, you can say all you want in terms of referees and, how the game was rigged or whatever. But, this Eagles team was dominant, right? And they did on the ground. And that's something that they've been leaning to the past few weeks, and it's been working. And, you kind of have to take that into account and give the credit where it's due, because if it's working, don't fix it. Don't change it. And that's where this Eagles team succeeds. And yes, even though A.J. Brown and, Devontae Smith and, even Dallas Goedert, they all have those weapons. But, when it comes down to it, if the Eagles win the battle in the trenches, it's going to be a long day for you. And that's pretty much how it was these past 2 games for the Eagles, playing the Giants and then playing the Niners at home, just, winning the ground game and being dominant down in the trenches. I will say Jalen Hurts, anytime TD is a lock. I feel like that's a lock at this point because he always finds his way into the end zone, whether it's his O lineman push him in or he does the read option. I feel like that's an easy prop for Super Bowl Sunday for anyone always looking at the early lines or whatever. But this was definitely not an exciting game, but it was definitely a great game for a Seahawks fan to watch. I was very, very happy to see the Niners get beat down left, right, and center, couldn't do anything on offense. And then, yes, obviously you don't like to see injuries. And, obviously you don't like to see Brock Purdy get injured. You don't like to see Josh Johnson get injured. You don't like to see any injuries. But, it's just a great time to see the Niners get some payback coming their way. So we'll definitely.
I just wanted to touch on the quarterback situation because it's going to be another long offseason of quarterback rumors, obviously, for the 49ers. Like last offseason, it was the same thing. And I think, heading into Sunday, the general thought was that it was, Purdy's job to lose for next season, regardless of what happened. But now, if the injury is what some are saying it might be, then that he could miss all of next season if it is like Tommy John, if it is that bad. And so then you have the kind of stance of whether it's Trey Lance or if you think that the roster is in a win now mode to where you want to bring in, a Tom Brady type of free agent who, obviously there's been rumors of Brady wanting to go there or vice versa for, 2-3 years now or so. So I think that's going to be interesting to see if they, because I don't think they're going to trade Lance if Purdy's injury is that bad, but maybe they let him. Maybe they have him sit one more year if they want to go with the more veteran quarterback like a Brady or even Aaron Rodgers is a possibility if they wanted to trade for him. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see all offseason long how that plays out.
Yeah, you mentioned, I completely forgot. Like, there's the whole Tom Brady speculation right now. He's been linked to San Francisco so many times. Obviously, he's from that area. And, now there's kind of this opening for like a 1-year quarterback. Because you mentioned we don't know the extent of Brock Purdy's injury. But, as a lot of people have speculated or seen, it's not pretty. Or I should say it's not Purdy. And, obviously they need someone who kind of fits that system. And Trey Lance, even though, yes, he's probably going to be healthier by the time, the season starts, he doesn't fit that system well. And Jimmy Garoppolo, he's probably going to be leaving, if not already has left in his mind. And, that kind of leaves an opening for a temporary quarterback who's either going to be retiring soon or, his time in the league is expired or about to expire. And, there's going to be a big quarterback carousel that's coming up off season. You mentioned Tom Brady. Aaron Rodgers has been added to the rumor mill as of late. There's so many quarterbacks, and now there's like another potential opening in San Francisco. So, the speculation is definitely going to continue on and on and on and on for the Niners this offseason to try and fill that hole for their starting quarterback next year. And then, it'll definitely be interesting to see who is being linked to the Niners. Obviously, the really only player is Brady right now, but he's also been linked to the Raiders as well. So we'll see how that battle goes out, and we'll see what Brady decides to do, whether he retires or not. But definitely be interesting. And then finally heading into Game 2, the more interesting game yet controversial game because the Bengals and Chiefs. I mean, a 3 3rd and 9s, whatever. A late push by Joseph Asai. That's not his fault, but yet everyone is putting him in that kind of, it's your fault kind of role, and that's not fair to him. He's trying his best out there. Bengals, unfortunately, get the loss. They can't complete the season sweep of the Chiefs. They fall 23-20. And hey, we were close, right? I think you said Chiefs 24-20. I said Bengals 24-20. So we were around the same score. So the under hit. But definitely, I kind of knew this under would hit. I just feel like this game was, destined to kind of, they were both defenses would bend and not break. We saw the Chiefs get a bunch of pass rush in the first half, and Joe Burrow, he was getting sacked more times than last week against the Bills, who didn't have any pass rush defense against the Bengals offensive line. They really miss Von Miller, but the Chiefs are different because they have a top 5 pass rush. They have Chris Jones. They have Frank Clark. They have Carlos Dunlap. They have George Karlaftis. They have a front that can get to the quarterback. And that's the scary thing with this Chiefs team. And, they definitely got to Joe Burrow sometimes. And, the run game was pretty inexistent. We didn't see much from Joe Mixon or Samaje Perine. And, the pass game was steady for the Bengals. They didn't really have any big explosive plays except for that T. Higgins touchdown and, that Jamar Chase double team coverage, whatever that catch was. That was ridiculous. But other than that, the Chiefs really limited the big plays against this team. And that's a credit to Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator for the Chiefs and his coaching ability. And then for the Chiefs offensively, look, it was Mahomes is trying to do so much with his one ankle, with his one foot. And, we saw many, many times where he could barely even run, or that mobility was so different from what we've usually seen in terms of when he's fully healthy. And even though he had basically 1.5 legs, he still somehow got the win. It was the third down where he was running and he was going to that first down. He gets the first down, and then Osai unfortunately pushes him out of bounds. That's kind of the Chiefs' luck. They get 15 free yards, and then they set up for the 40-yard field goal to win the game. And then, Kelsey's involved, and there was a late rumor that Kelsey might even be playing. And then you want to talk about injuries. I mean, the Chiefs are filled with injuries. Mahomes is still not 100% healthy. We don't know the health of Travis Kelce. We don't know. The whole receiving core is down. Juju Smith-Schuster went down. Michael Hardman got re-injured. Kadarius Toney went down. It was all left to Marquez Valdez-Scantling for a little while, along with Isaiah Pacheco out of the backfield. They had to get and then on defense, obviously they lost L'Jarius Sneed on one of the first plays on a scary hit where he was trying to make a tackle. They lost Willie Gay. You want to talk about a team that's, going to the Super Bowl, but yet a lot of questions. You talk about this Chiefs team because there are so many health problems right now for them, and it's definitely not opportune right now going into the Super Bowl. All these questions on with the availability, but the best thing about the Super Bowl is you get those 2 weeks off, and 2 weeks of well rest, and especially for this first week after a gritty win at home, definitely well rested against a good Bengals team who has pretty much had your number for the past year. So Ari, look, I want to get your thoughts on this game not just from a controversial standpoint with that with an extra down on 3rd and 9, and all that nonsense with the referees, and all the way to Harrison Butker kicking that 40-yard game-winning field goal. What do the Bengals do from here now? Because there's going to be a lot of free agents for this Bills team. I know Higgins is going to be available in free agency. There's going to be a lot of top guys for this Bengals team that could potentially be leaving. And I feel like this Bengals team is still going to be up there next year. I don't feel like this Bengals team is going to be falling off in terms of any way, just because of how they've really rebuilt this team to be a Super Bowl contender almost every year, and the talent that they have offensively. And then defensively, I feel like maybe just one big piece away. Maybe it's a defensive lineman, some linebacker help, or especially in the secondary where Mr. Cancun on 3 was chirping so much. But anyways, from the Bengals, what do they do this offseason? Where do they look into? And then for the Chiefs, it's going to be interesting because the Eagles have a lot more healthy players right now. They're definitely the team that is healthier, have the better momentum in terms of how they've just dominated their opponents back-to-back games. The Chiefs, I'm not going to say squeaked by, but, they beat the Jaguars by 7, who, are a very formidable offense. And then they beat a Bengals team that's had their number by a game-winning field goal. And that's how I kind of figured that game was going to end anyway. And even though all of that, this team is still super, super banged up, right? We don't know the health of anyone. And so you take that into account. Do you see the Chiefs somehow winning the Super Bowl? Because obviously no picks right now, but right now you can't bet on Mahomes, you can't bet against Mahomes, but it's hard to say that you shouldn't because of all the injuries that the Chiefs riled up last night in the AFC Championship game. So, what did you take away from this game from the Bengals and Chiefs side? What do you look for the Chiefs heading to the Super Bowl, and then for the Bengals, how do they look into the offseason to try and make it back to the Super Bowl after just missing the Super Bowl once again?
Yeah, starting with the Bengals, I don't think there's that much that needs to be changed. They were missing 2 or 3 starting offensive linemen in this game, and I was talking last week when we were previewing this game that I thought the Chiefs would be able to take advantage of that, which the Bills weren't able to do. And so I think that was the biggest difference. They had 3 or 4 sacks right away, in the first quarter, first half. And the Bengals, they did make the adjustments in the second half to where Burrow didn't face, quite as much pressure. in the second half until, maybe the last possession when Burrow had the intentional grounding and all that. But, the Bengals are still clearly, right there. I think they can – I don't see any, major changes coming their way in terms of, how the team is built at any position. So, this should be a rivalry between Burrow, Mahomes, Bengals, Chiefs, I think, for at least a few more years or, whatever it might be. And then with the Chiefs, yeah, obviously they are the way more injured team than the Eagles. But like you said, 2 weeks is a lot of time. And so I think I'd like to believe that most, if not all, of these key injured players, will be at least close to fully healthy, in a couple of weeks. And yeah, my current lean right now is the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, just not betting against Mahomes in this moment. Obviously, we know he's been here before. So, yeah, my early lean is the Chiefs, and that's, assuming that most of these banged players are healthy in 2 weeks. But, it should be a fun game. We're going to have to see a lot more from Hurts, obviously, in the Super Bowl than what he's had to do in these 2 playoff games so far. So that would be interesting to see. But, Hurts was, he won't win MVP, but he was in the conversation all regular season. So he's proven that he can step up when he needs to. And obviously Mahomes, Mahomes is Mahomes. So, yeah, it should be a fun game between, arguably the best team in the NFC and the best team in the AFC. You can argue what you want, but they're in the Super Bowl at the end of the day, and no matter how they got there. And yeah, it should be a close game. I think the Chiefs opened up as a 1-point favorite, but obviously right now the public is hammering the Eagles because of the Chiefs' injuries, and so I think the Eagles are a 1 or 2 point favorite right now. But obviously, with 2 weeks ago, a lot's going to change with the betting lines and all that, so it's kind of too early to make any for sure decisions and all of that because a lot's going to change.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot's going to change in the lines. You mentioned early leans are kind of for Philadelphia to win by 2. And, right now you can say that, Chiefs +2 is a lock, but, you don't know the injuries. And so that's why Philly is such a huge favorite. But it's hard to bet against Mahomes. And, early lean, I would go with Philly -2.5 just because of those injuries. And we don't really know the severity of all of them. But, after a week's rest, that line can change to Kansas City -2.5. And, we don't really know what it's going to be looking like in a week, but we'll see. But I definitely agree with you. It's hard to bet against Mahomes anyway, just because of, his ability to just come out in the clutch and, make you pay for betting against him. And, that's why I really like
the one touchdown he had. I think it was an MVS where he zipped it, and MVS was just sitting there. And if he throws it any slower, the ball gets knotted down. That was unreal.
Yeah, no, that's ridiculous. You talk about a narrow window, and he just nails the window right there. It's hard to bet against Mahomes. And, this Chiefs team, I feel like they're definitely always going to be a contender. They've been to 5 straight AFC championships. This is their 3rd Super Bowl appearance, trying to get ring number 2. It's just Mahomes is different, right? Mahomes, we've established that he's an MVP frontrunner, and I don't think the Eagles have played anyone like Mahomes who, has that ability to just work magic out of nothing. And, he can make a play that's broken turn into something super positive. And that's the scary thing about Patrick Mahomes right now is that he's injured and he can still do that. So imagine what he's going to be looking like 2 weeks healthier and at least in a position where he can do that. And, that's definitely going to be something to look out for as well. I definitely think this Bengals team is still going to be one of the top teams in the AFC next year. I still think they're a top 3 team. I don't think they have to do much as well. I feel like just focusing on, what to look for in free agency is going to be their key to success once again. But, they still have Joe Burrow. They're still going to have Jamar Chase. They're still going to have probably T. Higgins. They're still going to have Joe Mixon. They still have great talent on the defense side of the ball. I feel like they're right there. And it took them a 15-yard penalty because Mahomes was a couple steps out of bounds for them to really get the win. So, this Bengals team is always going to be there. They're always going to be right there because they are that talented. So kudos to the Bengals. They've had another great season, but just come up short against, a fantastic Chiefs team. And, people can argue, it was supposed to be the Bills and Niners, or say it was the Bengals and the Vikings, or whoever they said. But, the Chiefs and Eagles are the two best teams in their respective conferences, both number one seeds. So, this is the battle of number one seeds, the first Super Bowl matchup with all black QBs, another historic moment. Obviously, so many storylines for the Super Bowl, Kelsey versus Kelsey. Obviously, the whole Andy Reid revenge game, just so many storylines. We'll get into those probably next week as the Super Bowl comes a lot closer. But, just to wrap things up here, just a great game between two good rivals. And you mentioned kind of the start of a rivalry here because, it was the Chiefs and Bills are going to have this great rivalry. And then it was, but wait, now the Bengals and Chiefs are going to have this great rivalry. And now it's, the Bengals and Bills, they're going to have this great rivalry as well. And, it's kind of like a three-way kind of fight for the top for the AFC between the Bengals, Bills, and the Chiefs, with the Bengals right now sitting in second, the Chiefs at first, and then the Bills close behind that for three. And it'll definitely be interesting to see what these three teams do in the offseason, depending on what happens for the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, for them to either try and get better to beat the Chiefs or, kind of take the crown per se. So the AFC will definitely be a lot of fun to watch. But, Super Bowl is going to be a lot of fun. This is the matchup I was hoping to see, Chiefs and Eagles, the two best teams, I definitely would say, in each conference in terms of defense. In terms of pass rush, I mean, you have two great pass rushes against two good quarterbacks who know how to do it on the run and, all that stuff. And but, yes, it's definitely going to be a fun game to watch in a couple weeks. 13 days already until the NFL season's off, so it's crazy. It's been a fun ride this NFL season. We're already down to our final game in a couple weeks. But do you have anything else you want to say? Obviously, we're going to be coming back to you on Wednesday. We're going to be doing a little bit of an NBA, kind of breakdown of what's been going on, our best teams in the conference, who we think potentially can be, a team to watch out for come April, May, June, all that stuff. And then Friday, we're going to be going back to college basketball, and we're going to be doing a little bit of a college basketball preview as we get closer to March Madness, obviously a little bit over a month away. We're going to be looking at some of the best teams to look out for, so not an alert, but just to give you guys a warning, that the content may look a little different throughout the next couple of weeks as we wind down the NFL season. This is how it goes, one season ends, another season's already in the middle, and another season's about to begin. And, baseball's around the corner as well, so we're going to be giving you some of our division winners potentially, how after this free agency period looked at, who kind of looks the best in terms of their division, how their team looks, and, pitching rotations, lineups, all that fun stuff. Just a little bit of a warning, a little bit of a content shift, but we're still going to be doing it every day. We love you guys. We appreciate all the support. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe. Even though we're going to be switching up our content a little bit, we're still going to be doing what we love to do, and that's talking about sports with each other and with you guys. So, Ari, do you have anything else you want to say, man?
No, yeah. I mean, we're going to be diversifying the content a little bit more, but, we still have NFL free agency that comes up, quickly right after the season, and then the draft. So we'll still have NFL content out. Just we'll have other sports mixed in as well with the NFL talk.
Yeah, of course. We're obviously going to be talking about NFL free agency once that hits. Obviously in March, around March Madness time. So it's definitely going to be a lot of fun to look out for that. But this is going to be another episode of AKP Sports Talk. We thank you guys for watching. As I said, don't forget like, comment, share, subscribe. Do all that fun stuff. That's Ari. I'm Korea. We will see you guys on Wednesday. Peace out, guys.